بر محمد والے محمد صلوات. بارے دیگر صلوات. شہزادی سکینہ صلوات اللہ علیہ کے حال کے چند اشعار آپ کی نظر ہے. ایک بلند ترین صلوات کی درخواست ہے. کدی کہتا ہے مجھے کوئی یتیم بابا، اب مجھے کوئی سکینہ نہیں کہتا بابا. نیل رخسار پہ بینائی بھی جس کی کم ہو، عمر ہو 4 برس اور کمر میں خم ہو، آپ نے دیکھی ہے کیا ایسی ضعیفہ بابا، اب مجھے کوئی سکینہ نہیں کہتا بابا. خون بے شیر سے اندازہ کیا تھا میں نے، آپ کا چہرہ تو پہچان لیا تھا میں نے، آپ پہچانو گے کیسے میرا چہرہ بابا. وہ تو بیمار تھی مر جاتی سفر میں آ کے، دفن کرتے اسے بازار میں بابا کیسے، یہ تو اچھا ہوا ہی نہیں صغرا بابا. میری آنکھوں سے بہے جاتے تھے آنسو اس دم، ہاتھ بھی میں نے لگایا نہیں دادی کی قسم، دینا چاہا مجھے لوگوں نے صدقہ بابا. اس گھڑی ڈھونڈ رہی تھی میں چچا جان کا سر، کیسے بتلاؤں کہ کیا گزری تیری بیٹی پر، مجھ کو ظالم نے کنیزی میں جو مانگا بابا، بین یہ کرتے ہی خاموش ہوئی وہ اکبر، آج تو جائیں گے ساتھ اپنے مجھے بھی لے کر، آپ کو میری قسم کیجیے وعدہ بابا، اب مجھے کوئی سکینہ نہیں کہتا بابا. صلوات.
مرثیے کے چند بند پیش کرنے جا رہا ہوں کہ صلوات پڑھ لیں مل کے محمد و آل محمد پر. جب گل ہوا چراغ حرم قید شام میں، یعنی سکینہ مر گئی یاد امام میں، دیکھے ستم یزید کے دربار عام میں، شہ کے سلام کو گئی دارو سلام میں، دنیا میں داد رسنا ملا داد خواہ کو، جا کر نشہ تماچوں کے دکھلا، جا کر نشہ تماچوں کے دکھلائے شاہ، غل پڑ گیا حسین کی عاشق نے کی قضا، بانوں نے نبض دیکھی تو پایا نہ دم ذرا، چلائی صدقے جاؤں مجھے دے گئی دغا، اپنی کہی نہ میری سنی ہائے کیا کیا، اصغر کو کچھ پیام بھی میں نے دیا نہیں، تم چل بسی اور اماں نے رخصت کیا، تم چل بسی اور اماں نے رخصت کیا، تم نے جو شام سے میرے زانو پسر دھرا، میں سمجھی تھی کہ کانوں کا کچھ درد کم ہوا، آئی ہے آج سونے کو خود میری محلقہ، اس درد لا دوا کی خبر تھی یا مطلقہ، آباد گود کی تھی میری خالی کرنے کو، سوئی تھی آج پاس میرے، سوئی تھی آج پاس میری، سوئی تھی آج پاس میرے بی بی مرنے کو، اور محمد و آل محمد صلوات.
If I could request everybody to please scoot up as much as you can, especially those sitting in the back, if you could come up, inshallah. With the loudest of your salawats, please invite Sheikh to take the pulpit. Bar Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat.
For the love of the Holy Prophet Muhammad al-Mustafa, one loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Please open your Qur'ans to the following two verses. You can open them on your apps or on Google. Kindly open your Qur'ans to the following verses. Chapter number 9, Surah At-Tawbah. Chapter number 9, Surah At-Tawbah, verse 122. And then chapter number 4, Surah An-Nisa, verse number 83. Chapter number 4, Surah An-Nisa, verse number 83. As we mentioned yesterday, we would like everyone to actually benefit from reading the ayat and digesting them, being aware of where the Quran speaks of these matters. For sure, for many of us, even though we may have read these verses before in our life, this will be the first time we actually study these verses together. And so it's very important that everybody takes time to be able to try to follow the verses and the ahadith that we are discussing, inshaAllah. For the love of the awaited Savior of humanity, and to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to hasten his appearance, Imam al-Mahdi, ajjalallahu ta'ala faraj al-sharif, sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Can we begin with a Surah Al-Fatiha for the following marhumeen: Sayyid Abu Hassan Musawi, Sayyid Abu Qasim Musawi, Sayyid Jamil Hassan Musawi. Please begin with Surah Al-Fatiha. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. For the love of Aba Abdullah al-Hussein, one very loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين سيدنا الممجد بشير المصدق المصطفى الأمجد محمود الأحمد أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين ولعنة الله على الظالمين من الأولين والآخرين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه المجيد وقوله الحق: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وما كان المؤمنون لينفروا كافة فلولا نفر من كل فرقة منهم طائفة ليتفقهوا في الدين ولينذروا قومهم إذا رجعوا إليهم لعلهم يحذرون. آمنا بالله. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد. Awaited Savior of humanity, Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam, my respected teachers, elders, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. عظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم بمصابنا أبي عبد الله الحسين عليه السلام. Imagine it is the year 2026 and His Eminence Grand Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Hussein As-Sistani, may Allah grant him the longest of lives, preserve him for us. Imagine it is 2026 and His Eminence Sayyid As-Sistani Dama Tawfiquhu releases an edict or a fatwa or a hukm, and he says, as an example, it is haram shar'an for a person to do business with a corporation, a company that is actively pursuing destroying the planet. First of all, it would not be surprising, considering the obligations that are upon us, as mentioned yesterday in some detail. But secondly, you know, for example, that all of the maraji are united, that there is a certain state or occupying state that we are not permitted to do any business with at all. Why? Because this state destroys humanity, and so whether you are buying a can of soda or whether you are buying an item that is for technology or anything, even traveling there for ziyarah, our maraji al-kiram are united that it is haram shara'an for us to do any sort of business with them. In the fiqh of the school of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, there are the evidences and the mechanisms that provide us with these fatwa. When the maraji', for example, state, it is not permissible for us to do any business, we must boycott those entities and those corporations that are serving that occupying entity, that illegal, illegitimate entity, there are mechanisms within the school of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam that give rise to that opinion from our maraji' al-kiram. For example, it is agreed upon in all schools of thought. The hadith comes to us from the Holy Prophet Muhammadin al-Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, where the Prophet is narrated to have said that it is impermissible for a Muslim to even sell a sword to the enemy that will be used in the way of killing another Muslim. This is something mentioned within the books of ahadith. The fiqh is built off the back of these narrations. And that's why we know that when it comes to the illegal, illegitimate entity that is occupying Palestine, we are prohibited from having any interaction with them whatsoever. But in the same way, we actually have many, many ayat and ahadith that could build a legitimate and bona fide chapter of climate and environmental law. Many of them, which we're going to be able to just touch upon tonight, inshaAllah. The same way, would not be a surprise for us to have this sort of fatwa. It will not be a surprise very soon when you, inshaAllah, see a new chapter of fiqh being developed and these laws actually being placed upon you and I, the same way we have other laws that are present within the book of the Masail al-Shar'iyyah. Tonight, inshaAllah, we're going to talk about how the fuqaha, the maraji' al-kiram, the mujtahideen in the hawza ilmiya perform their istinbat al-shar'iyyah, how they actually perform their deep dive into the Quran and into the Sunnah to be able to create these laws and to see what type of laws may be upon us in the very, very near future. And you'll be so surprised to see how real world they are and how they may actually affect not only our spending, but every part of our life may need to be adjusted if marja actually makes these laws for you and I. And these are already discussions that are happening within the Hawza Ilmiya that we're going to present to you tonight, inshaAllah. The same way that within Islamic law there is development and new chapters of fiqh are being created, even within the Western world there are new chapters of law being created. I don't know if you know this, but within our school of thought, the school of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, the ulama are constantly producing new chapters of fiqh. Did you know that the mujtahideen, for example, in Qom, actually have a bahth al-kharij, a whole debate, weeks and weeks and weeks on the discussion of the laws of social media? Did you know that? It's actually there. There are many mujtahideen that spend weeks and months plowing through those ayat and ahadith to create these specific laws. And it wouldn't surprise you, would it, if you think about, for example, where our social media is going, we actually do need laws that help us. What do we have? We have, for example, major issues around addiction. We have major issues around identity. We have major issues, questions regarding where social media will go in the future. Meta, for example, is on the verge of not just having us with VR technology, virtual reality, but imagine tomorrow an entire meta universe that's going to take over human beings. AI, for example, is already there. Where will that take us in 10 or 20 or in 50 years' time? Where will it take us when we can have little chips, nano chips that are put into our brain where we can download information from? These things are not far away. We are talking only years and decades away from them occurring. The mujtahideen already have chapters of fiqh in all of these different areas. Why? Because it is a need of our time. By priority, the Hawza Ilmiya does not shut itself off from any other discussion, including what is known as fiqh al-bi'ah, the fiqh and the ahkam and the laws of our jurisprudence for our environment. Al-bi'ah is the environment. The fiqh of bi'ah is the ahkam shar'iyya regarding the environment. In the same way, we have evolution, and the chapters of ahkam continue to develop and change and shift. Even within the Western world, this chapter of law is burgeoning. Environmental law has been there for decades. In fact, almost a whole century, environmental law has been there. But specifically, climate law in the West is a new and burgeoning field of law itself. This is only about 10 or 15 years old. You know, always when you have a lawyer, you have lawyers in various different areas. Whenever you've needed a lawyer, you might have needed a lawyer for different reasons. Sometimes there are matters when it comes to medical malpractice. Sometimes you need a lawyer in regards to divorce, God forbid. For example, you need it in regards to tort law. Sometimes you need law in different areas. But only now is the Western world beginning to produce climate lawyers. And their duty, their sole responsibility is to ensure that the laws, the international and national laws, are kept when it comes to climate. And the same way that's a burgeoning area of law, in the Islamic field as well, it is a burgeoning area of law. And very soon, you will see that is being produced, and all of us who do taqleed of any marja, when that marja produces that law, you and I will be bound to it the same way we would be bound to any law such as wudu, or when we do hajj, or when we give khums. And so tonight, inshallah, we need to be able to open that discussion a little more broadly. In regards to the scholars that are pushing and leading the way when it comes to specifically climate law, there are many senior mujtahideen from the Hawza Ilmiya that are doing this. For example, we have a great scholar in Lebanon by the name of Ayatollah Sheikh Muhammad Hussein Khashan. Sheikh Khashan has created a book which is called Khutawat ila Fiqh al-Bi'ah, the steps towards a bona fide fiqh of bi'ah, a fiqh of the environment. For example, in the city of Karbala, one of the leading scholars by the name of Ayatollah Sheikh Fadil As-Saffar has also created a work. Previously, in the last generation of our parents, one of the grand scholars and mujtahideen of the time, one of the grand maraja of the time, by the name of Ayatollah Sayyid Muhammad Hussein Al-Shirazi, rahmatullahi ta'ala alayh, also wrote a book by the name of Fiqh al-Bi'ah. You may have heard of Ayatollah Al-Shirazi. He's known famously as Imam Al-Shirazi, rahmatullahi ta'ala alayh. He wrote the most number of books in the history of Islam. Do you know how many books he wrote before he passed away? 1,400 books. Not with a typewriter, not with an iPad or a laptop, with his fingers, a pen. When he died, because he had committed so much to pen and paper, his fingers had become bent. These are your maraja. This is the standard of the maraja that we have. Amongst the works that he wrote more than 30 years ago was Fiqh al-Bi'ah. a work more to do with the aqa'id and the human relationship with the environment. But these trailblazing scholars have actually opened the door towards this work that is now burgeoning and is being created. And very soon you and I will have a new chapter of fiqh that is in our rasail, amaliyah, the same way any other bab is mentioned within the ahkam and amaliyah that we have. In the Western world, it is very interesting because climate law has a number of different strands to it, some of which we're going to talk about tonight and map and mirror when it comes to Islamic law as well, and to see how Maraji actually begin to make some fatwa in these areas. Amongst the issues in climate law is the following. For example, if a state has companies that have persistently broken those laws, or a state has caused natural harm and disaster and actually created many refugees off the back of this, what is the law of refugees for those who are forced to leave their home when it comes to climate disaster? I'll give you a simple example. Right now, we talked about yesterday in Jasper. Do you remember I asked you yesterday, have you seen the news about Jasper in Canada? Jasper is one of the most beautiful parts of the world, visited by millions of people every year, but it's being burnt to the ground at the moment because of 40 degrees heat and rapid winds that are spreading those fires. Thousands upon thousands of people have lost their homes. From the perspective of climate law, from the legal perspective, what does the state owe them? Does the state of Canada owe them to be moved to another house? Or is it upon them and their insurance company? Can you see? Even here, I can imagine over the last number of months when it comes to the horrible tornadoes and hurricanes that have ripped through, you have a question, don't you? The water that is piling up outside, is it the state's duty to assist you or not? Well, what if the state has been creating climate change and you are suffering? Should it come from your pocket or should it come from the state to look after you? These are real world questions that climate lawyers work on your behalf to make sure that those things are secured on your behalf. That legislation is there on your behalf. This is one area that they work in. Another one that's very interesting that we're going to talk about tonight, inshallah, is the question of civil disobedience. Have you heard of civil disobedience? What is civil disobedience? Who can tell me? Where have you heard civil disobedience apply to? Ahsant. Martin Luther King is a great example of civil disobedience. Why Martin Luther King? What did he do? He broke the laws that he considered to be fundamentally unjust. For what purpose? Civil rights, correct? Do you agree that he did a right thing? He broke laws that he considered to be immoral. For example, something as simple as there was a fountain that no black people could drink from. And he went and drank, as an example. Or you to sit in a part of a bus that was exclusively for white people. Is it a law that is moral or immoral? Immoral or moral? Immoral. So he breaks the law. Should he be penalized for it? Yes or no? Yes or no? He broke the law. Now, in the same way that Martin Luther King believed something, you have, as you know, many hundreds of thousands, millions of people around the world that not just protest against climate change, but they break the laws to try to be able to say this is an urgent matter of life and death. And therefore, they also do civil disobedience. Question. If you went to Marja in 1964, when Martin Luther King was breaking civil laws, doing civil disobedience, and you asked him, Sayyid al-Marja, what is your opinion? Is what he is doing halal or haram shar'an? Are we allowed to join him? Are we allowed to be able to break the laws of the United States of America? What would the Marja al-A'la have said at the time? In the same way, if you went to Marja today and said, there is not a protest, there's civil disobedience. We want to get the word out urgently, quickly. We want to force change in society because we're talking about life and death. Marja, do you permit me to break the law of the land? What would he say? I'll give you the answer later, because I know what they'll say. I've checked. Can you see? Climate law looks after this. It says, look, they broke the law, but it was an immoral law, or they were trying to force a moral change within society. The judge should look a different way. They argue this. This is there within climate law today, all around the world. How many times have you seen protesters do something, get arrested, and now they need a lawyer to be able to be on their side? It wasn't just only in climate law. How many of those supporting the Palestinian causes in different universities up and down this country broke the civil law, but did it because they did something that they believed was right? They were there in Colombia, they're in NYU, they're in Barcelona, they're in Madrid, they're in London, they're in Manchester, breaking the law, but what they believe is a bigger cause than just themselves. What does the Sharia say? Are you permitted to break the law if you believe that you are protecting the climate from catastrophe and disaster? Doesn't the Sharia need to have an answer? Yes or no? Yes. This is within fiqh al-bi'ah. Marja must produce a fatwa to give you an answer. Are you allowed or not? We'll talk about this. Or for an example, space exploration. SpaceX. Our friend Elon wants to conquer not just the world, but the whole solar system. If he could, he would colonize. I'm using a very specific word, huh? Colonize. These guys love to colonize things, don't they? Subhanallah. They want to colonize Mars, for example. When it comes to it, are there laws for space exploration? Are there laws by which the human race now moves from its home planet Earth to another planet? Well, you know, we're going to be there very soon. Space tourism is only a few years away, if not already started. Space is not just about exploration anymore. Space is now about getting the minerals and the water from other planets. Can you imagine where we'll be in 50 years' time? Doesn't Marja need to give law for this? Wouldn't the 12th Imam have law for this? Doesn't the Quran have law for this? Of course, within fiqh al-bi'ah there is law for this. And there are many, many others as well. Amongst the most interesting ones that comes from climate specialists is this one. Reparations. Have you heard of reparations? What's the word in the traditional fiqh when we have to give a reparation to something or someone? Say it again. Kafara. Sometimes when you harm something or someone, or kill something or someone, or damage something or someone, you either have to replace it or you have to pay a kafara for that thing, don't you? Correct? Think about this as a question. If you damage the environment, are there ahadith on the kafara that has to be paid? Yes or no? Do you think they exist? He's like, I don't know. There are actually. In the abwab of kafara, there are many, many ahadith on the issue of what happens if you damage the environment, what reparations there are paid even for the destruction of animals. So don't think that these conversations that are being happening between climate lawyers and Islamic scholars are not real ones. They are real issues that come. And many, many of them are actually going to affect us, not only in the past really, but we need them urgently. We need those fatwa and those guidance urgently. Do you know why? You should be proud to know that we are the only community in the world that has this structure of authority, which is a scholastic authority. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Our Holy Prophet Muhammadin al-Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam is narrated to have said, Al-ulama warathatul anbiya. The ulama, the scholars, are the inheritors of the prophets. The wilaya and the authority, whether you believe in absolute wilaya such as wilayat al-faqih, or you believe in limited wilaya such as in other places, either way there is wilaya over us, isn't there? There is authority. When the marja gives you your fatwa, you and I are obligated to follow it. Could you see? it becomes very, very real for us. And this is why the issue of us having this discussion, going to the Hawza Ilmiya, asking these questions becomes very, very pertinent. Please open your Qur'ans to chapter number 9, Surah At-Tawbah. Which ayah? Who remembers the ayah that we said that we wanted everyone to open? Verse number 122, Jazakumullah khair, just in case anyone wasn't here at the beginning and they know which ayah they need to open from their Quran. Chapter number 9, verse 122. Look at the obligation and the duties that we have at our local level to go and speak to marja and ask these questions that are relevant to our world, relevant to our life, and then come back and spread that knowledge from amongst ourselves. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وما كان المؤمنون لينفروا كافة فلولا نفر من كل فرقة منهم طائفة ليتفقهوا في الدين وَلِيُنذِرُوا قَوْمَهُمْ إِذَا رَجَعُوا إِلَيْهِمْ لَعَلَّهُمْ يَحْذَرُونَ. It is not befitting for the believers that they should all go forth. Meaning what? It is not befitting that all the believers go forth to war. Why? Because if we all go forth in one direction in life, then the other needs of society are not going to be met. What should happen? Why should not a company from every party from amongst them go forth and apply themselves لِيَتَفَقَّهُوا فِي الدِّينِ, to gain the depth of knowledge, and then come back and warn their own communities about what needs to be told to them. You see, when we engage in discussions with ulama, fuqaha, when you go to Najaf, when you go to Qom, and you're sitting with maraji', we need to actually ask them the real world questions that affect us and encourage that debate, encourage that research that comes back and actually helps us in our day-to-day life, becoming the very best Muslims that we can come. Think about this as a point. I had the honor once of visiting His Eminence Grand Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Hussein al-Sistani, may Allah grant him a long life. And you know, you take the group, there's 20, 30, 40 people, may Allah bless you. Inshallah, you've been to visit His Eminence Sayyid al-Sistani, yes? So you know what that room is like, and he's sitting, and sometimes there's a translator, or you get to ask one question or two questions. There's a little bit of time with His Eminence. Allah is my witness. We had the honor of going. There was a group. One person from the group had one opportunity to ask a question. His Eminence is very busy. His Eminence has an incredible workload that we cannot even fathom. You get one question. You want to make it valuable. What did the person ask? One person asked, Sayyid, sometimes we go to the toilet inside the haram and the toilet is dirty. Is there anything you can do about this? I'm being serious, huh? Now, I'm not saying cleanliness in the toilet is not important. It is. And nidafatu min al-iman. Cleanliness is from faith itself, as per the hadith. But there are other people inside the haram who are responsible for this. There are khuddam, there are management, there are people who you can ask and they can go and deal with this. His Eminence said, of course, inshallah, I will convey the message. We do this. We go there and we have our moon sighting wars, and we want to ask him about moon sighting. And we have our wars as to where I can eat and I can't eat. And I ask, is a Hindu najis? We've been asking these questions for 30 years. The marja has already given you every answer. And I know you've asked every Maulana that has already come on this pulpit twice. True or not? Some people, may Allah bless them, in the Q&A, they will ask the same question every single time. We actually need to demand and ask, create the fatwa that are needed for our time. We're talking about literally planetary collapse. If we don't show that we are a mature Shia community, a thinking Shia community, a leading Shia community, then what will happen? The marja will look at us and say, I can't push the discussion forward if I don't think my own community is ready for it. If all you want from the pulpit is nothing more than fada'il, tabarra and tawalla and tabarra, all you want is stories, if you don't want academic, intellectual discussion to push your community forward, then what happens? The next generation grow up thinking that all Islam is nothing more than fada'il. All Islam is the same stories that you heard 30 years ago when you were young. They don't know anymore. But Islam is deeper than that. لِيَتَفَقَّهُ فِي الدِّينِ, the verse said. You have to go and get the depths of religion itself. This is a huge challenge that we're facing. And sometimes many members of our community, all they want is the same stories that they knew last time. Same stories from 2008. Same stories that they heard when they were in 1980s. The community has moved forward. Don't hold the community back. Don't be amongst those people that hold the community back when we need to now move forward and live in the times in which we are living in. So here we understand that there is this burgeoning bab of fiqh. The mujtahideen of the time are engaged in it, and we need to participate in it. Now, what I want to be able to do for the remainder of the discussion, inshallah, is maybe show you two masail al-shar'iyyah, two issues from amongst the chapter of fiqh al-bi'ah that will absolutely have an impact upon mine in your life. And all I'm doing is I'm just giving you an example. Please, please know I am not giving fatwa. I'm repeating, I am not giving you, repeat it so that I know you've acknowledged it. I'm not giving you fatwa. Ahsantum, barakallahu feekum. All I'm doing is showing you that in the Bahth al-Kharij, these are the discussions that are had. And to at least think about this issue. Sometimes you know what is ethically right. Sometimes you know what is your duty in a certain situation. You don't even need marja to tell you. But we don't wait for fatwa. We say we understand our duty and we need to think about some of these masail together, inshallah. Okay, in order to enter the masail, I'm going to just ask you one or two questions and we'll get the brain moving, inshallah, and it will help us to understand this issue. Question for you. What are the three biggest contributors to climate change and global warming? Ahsantum, barakallahu feekum, fossil fuels. Everybody understands what we mean by that, that when we burn those fossil fuels, it releases a certain chemical into the atmosphere. That chemical gathers. It means that the heat is trapped inside the surface to air temperature goes up. Everybody understands that. And we understand that we are slowly transitioning away from fossil fuels, or at least we are supposed to. I know in Texas, which is the oil and gas state of the capital of the world, it is difficult to transition. And I understand the challenges that are ahead of us. But remember, we are not thinking as people from Texas. You're not thinking as a Lone Star member. You are thinking as a Muslim and as a Shia Muslim who will be asked on the Day of Judgment about what we do in this world with our lives. Sah? Correct? Excellent. Number one, our fossil fuel burning, single biggest contributor. What's another biggest of the top three contributors? You are right. One of the top five is the destruction of the Amazon rainforest. Do you know why? Because the Amazon rainforest is the lungs of the planet. Yeah, trees, they take in dirty air and they produce clean air. They take in the carbon dioxide and they release fresh oxygen for you and I to be able to breathe. If you destroy the lungs of a human being, can he breathe? If you destroy the lungs of the planet, can he breathe? No. So that's one of the biggest. What else? Yes, ahsantum. Not just the US military, the empire. The US empire, across the entirety of the world, the amount of pollution and chemicals that it releases is one of the three biggest destroyers of this planet. Wouldn't surprise you to hear. What's the other one? I'll tell you. Methane. Or I think you guys say it methane here. Is that right? I have to be very conscious when I come to the States. If I say football, I mean soccer, huh? Yeah? Methane is the largest cause of global warming. Why? Who's a scientist here? Who can tell me? We'll come to that in a second. We'll come to the why first, and then we'll come to where it comes from. You're one step ahead of the game, uncle. Why? What is wrong with methane from the perspective of global warming? So when we burn fossil fuels and we're releasing that carbon dioxide and it's going into the atmosphere, right? The problem with methane is that methane is a heavier gas and it actually gets trapped. So it's like me saying you have an umbrella. Let's say you're having a cigarette, as an example. May Allah bless us. We don't want to be smokers, but you understand the example. You're smoking, and then you've got the umbrella on top of you. What happens? Can you see? All that will be trapped underneath the umbrella. The methane does that. It is a gas that actually traps the carbon dioxide. So it's even worse than the carbon dioxide. By priority, we actually have to stop the methane release, because at least some of the carbon dioxide otherwise can be fixed. There are ways to be able to extrapolate that from the air. Methane, arguably, the climate experts and scientists say, is the biggest harm to all of us as a collective human species. Okay? طيب. Where does it come from? Cows and agriculture. What that means is our industrial level of farming of beef is actually the single biggest cause, because not only is it releasing an undue amount of methane, it is also capturing the other gases that need to not be trapped within the atmosphere. This is very important. Why am I telling you this? We mentioned yesterday there's a hadith of the Holy Prophet Muhammad al-Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, where the Prophet is narrated to have said, La dharar wa la dhirar. No harm, no harming. You are not permitted to do harm. You are not permitted to do? Very important. This hadith is accepted by every marja. May Allah bless them. I will give you books if anyone asks. There are scholars who have written entire books this thick just on this hadith, La dharar wa la dhirar. Allah is my witness. I will show it to you. I'll give it to you if you want. That's how important a hadith it is in our school of thought. Marajih have written entire books this thick on this one hadith and its application. You are not permitted to harm. And where harm is, it is wajib shar'an to try to reduce harm as much as you can. Now think about this as a very simple question. You're all very, very intelligent people, but put 2 and 2 and get 4. If methane and its release at an industrial level is the biggest cause of harm to the human species, and the Prophet has said, we forbid harm, and you have to reduce harm, and it is wajib for you to try to stop the harm that is coming to you, what is the thing the Sharia might tell us is the fundamental priority that we have to be able to deal with in this planet? What would it be? The release of methane. That means that we have to completely scale back the industrialized level of meat production and meat consumption that is taking place in the earth today. If we don't do that, we are on a one-way path towards destruction. If we can do that, that will be the single biggest contributing factor. Forget going, getting Musk's cars and, I don't know what, forget that. The biggest single contributor that you could do is actually restrict or remove meat from your diet, at least temporarily. Stop the beef. I don't mean that in a rap sense, Stop the beef. I mean that in the sense of stop consuming so much meat. Now here is the issue. Would it surprise you if I told you, because I mentioned this to you yesterday, you shouldn't be surprised when I tell you these things by now, Would it be a surprise if I told you Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam temporarily restricted the eating of meat when it was harmful to the ummah? Would it surprise you, yes or no? Yes or no? It doesn't surprise you. Why doesn't it surprise you? It surprised me when I read it. But they were that far ahead that when even the eating of a specific animal, listen to my words and understand them, even the eating of a specific one specific animal was harmful to the needs of the ummah, Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam temporarily made the eating of that one animal haram shar'an in order to protect the ummah of the Prophet. Should I read you the hadith? Would you like me to read it to you? Okay. This hadith comes to us from our 5th and our 6th holy imams, Muhammad al-Baqir and Ja'far ibn Muhammad al-Sadiq, salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhima. And by the way, this hadith is sahih sanadan. The maraji accept it as a means of deriving Islamic law. Okay? So they can all say with pride that this is a hadith that we use in the school of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. But I'm now thinking with you about this in terms of the global warming needs. Listen to the hadith in the past and how you would apply it today if you're a mujtahid, or might apply it. Remember, I'm not giving you fatwa. I'm just opening the doors of thinking with you, and you may find that it's helpful. The hadith I'll read in Arabic first and then give you a simple translation, inshaAllah. وقال إمام الصادق عليه السلام سئل أبي عن لحوم الحمر الأهلية. Imam alayhi salam said, my father, Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam, was asked about the eating of meat of domesticated donkey. Hands up, how many of you have eaten donkey? None of you? MashaAllah, that's makruh. Tried donkey, Sayyid? No? Okay, good. Imam alayhi salam, this is Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, he says, my father was asked about the eating of domesticated donkey. So is this meat or a specific type of meat? Which one? Specific. There's a qaid to it. There's a limitation. It's specifically domesticated donkey. فقال نهى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله عن أكلها لأنها كانت حمولة الناس يومئذ وإنما حرام ما حرم الله في القرآن وإلا فلا. Let me explain. Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam said, my father was asked about eating the meat of domesticated donkey. He, the Prophet, the Imam alayhi salam replied, the Messenger of Allah prohibited its eating, prohibited the eating of the donkey, because during the time of Battle of Khaybar, it was a means of transport of people to the battlefield. What is permanently made haram is in the Quran. What is temporarily made haram is by the sunnah of Ahlul Bayt, salawatullah wa salamu alayhim ajma'een. Let me explain the hadith. It becomes very simple for you. At that time, when there was a very new burgeoning ummah, amongst the most important things was what? Protecting the ummah from the Quraysh, protecting the ummah from the sword of the Jews. So there was the battles of Badr and Uhud and Khaybar and Khandaq. You all know this. Now, if the warriors couldn't get to the battlefield, what would have happened in the war itself? Would the Muslims have won or would they have lost? Which one? Which one? Won or lost? If they couldn't get their weapons, their swords, their shields, their bows, their arrows, their spears to the battlefield, would they have won or would they have lost? Lost. So the vehicle of getting people and weapons to the battlefield was what? Which animal? Domesticated? Donkey. Now what would happen if all of you started eating the donkeys? No? Ahsantum. No transport. No transport to the battlefield. People wouldn't have made it to the battle. And the weapons wouldn't have made it to the battle. What would have happened? The ummah would have been destroyed by the enemies. So what did the Prophet do? Shara'an. He made it temporarily haram for you to eat domesticated donkey in order to protect the ummah from harm. It's incredible, isn't it? It's so obvious. It's so simple, isn't it? I mean, The Prophet has to make an intervention and say, don't do this, otherwise you're going to kill us all. Very simple. Now imagine, mashallah, you're all intelligent people. Imagine you are a mujtahid in Najaf. Imagine you are a mujtahid in Qom. And a climate scientist, expert, someone from Al-Ghadir comes and visits on ziyarah. He says, Sayyidina al-Marja, I have a question, su'al. Methane is the single biggest contributor to global warming. The Prophet said, La dharar wa la dhirar, no harm, no harming. We need at a planetary level to scale back the industrialized consumption of meat. And we need our own mu'mineen to be able to stop eating so much meat, constantly gazumping that meat, eating meat every day, breakfast, lunch, dinner, leftovers, every time, majlis comes, every time, in order to participate in the saving of the planet. Ma ra'yuk Sayyidina? What's your opinion? Now, I'm not giving you fatwa, but I'm showing you that if you're going to do istinbat, if you're going to bring out the law, there is already a precedent from the Prophet where he temporarily banned the eating of a certain type of animal in order to protect the ummah from disaster. If you're mujtahid, you have an evidence, you have a dalil. Am I shara'an allowed to be able to temporarily make eating of meat haram? Potentially. Is it potentially possible to make it makruh? Potentially. In order to what? Save the planet from catastrophe and disaster. I'm not giving you fatwa. I'm making you think about what might come tomorrow from fatwa. I'm not giving you fatwa, irrespective of fatwa comes or doesn't come. Now you know the biggest contributor is methane. If we were serious about restraining ourselves, the first thing that we would have to do, even before the gas-guzzling cars, is actually change our diets. If you could just change our diet, if we could just change our diet, and you know it's true, what happens? What's for breakfast? Paya. Guilty pleasure. Guilty pleasure? No. Every day we're having meat. Every day, every day. You know better than me. Very famous tradition that the Holy Prophet Muhammadin al-Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa alih would eat meat once every 40 days. That's the sunnah, to eat meat once every 40. You know where that comes from? The hadith mentions that the companions used to say, we would see that the fireplace, the chimney of the Prophet's house would only let out smoke once every 40 days. Maybe on other days, Eid, maybe after the victory of a war, they would be eating of meat, a celebration. But outside of that, it was only once every 40 days. Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib, salawatullah wa salamuhu alayh. Famous hadith, don't let your stomach become a graveyard of animals. You already know the hadith, we're not living it. Why? Are we not Shia? We want to invert the whole sunnah just because, hey, and by the way, every time I'm told about Houston, the thing that you're most famous for is all the great food. Allah is my witness. One person today told me, I won't say who, he goes, there's not that much to do in Houston, but you'll get good food here, bro. So I already know. I'm guilty of it, huh? I'm not trying to be a hypocrite here. I enjoy a good burger. Who doesn't? But I'm saying to you, we need to be able to change our diets. Not only for the spiritual side, huh? The hadith says that the more meat you eat, the harder your heart becomes. That's not a physical thing, that's a spiritual thing. Yeah? The reason why we can't cry in dua or in salah is because my heart has become hard. Where does that come from? Imam said, the more meat you eat, the harder your heart will become. I don't know if you know this stat. Only a few decades ago, 1 in 5 would get cancer. Nowadays, it's more than 1 in 2 will get cancer in their lives. May Allah protect us. The single biggest contributor is the diet that we have. The single biggest contributor to us getting cancer is our diet. And which specific part of our diet? Ahsantum. Eating too much red meat. Remember, I keep saying this a couple of times to you. Please understand why I'm saying this to you. We're not red state. We're not blue state. We're not Americans. We're Muslims first. We have to live as Muslims. Our diet, our lifestyle has to be as Muslims. Now here, there are many other mechanisms that help us in fiqh, but I don't want to lengthen the discussion too much. I'll just give you one more. It gives us a little bit of an insight, again, into what the Maraji are contemporaneously saying about this particular issue. So I'm saying to you, we do need to absolutely reduce our meat intake. And you don't need fatwa to tell you that now. But if someone was to give you fatwa and you ask, where does he get this dalil from? Where does he get this shar'an evidence? Now you know where the evidence comes from. Let's go back to the question of civil disobedience. And by the way, I personally have been asked this question many, many a times. And the reason why, because of my area of interest of activism, many Muslims and Shia have said, are we allowed to be able to do civil disobedience? Are we allowed? In the UK, I'm just giving you an example. In the UK, there are protest groups that do a lot of things. They glue themselves to the road in front of companies that are major, major polluters in order to block them, in order to raise awareness of it. They know they're going to get arrested. The question once came to me, Shar'an, is it permitted to do this? I said, I don't know. I need to go and check with the Maraji. I can't give you fatwa, but I can check and come back to you in the school of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. If you are passionate enough or you recognize that there's a climate emergency and you joined a protest and it became civil disobedience, you sat down in the street or you chained yourself to a tree, whatever the case may be, are you allowed to do it or not? You may say, the Maraji don't know what's going on. No, the Maraji are speaking and discussing this issue. Different mujtahideen of Najaf have already mentioned and spoken about some of this discussion. I had the honor of visiting 3 of the leading mujtahideen in Najaf just 2 years ago and asking this question to them. And I'm just reporting back to you what their answers were. So at least you see that there is this burgeoning bab, this chapter of fiqh al-bi'ah being debated and discussed. We had the honor of asking His Eminence Sayyid Muhammad al-Rida al-Sistani, the son of His Eminence Grand Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Hussein al-Sistani, Dama Tawfiqahuma, and I asked point blank, civil disobedience, Isyanul Madani, is it permitted in regards to bi'ah? May Allah bless him. His Eminence Sayyid Muhammad al-Rida al-Sistani responded by saying, but you are allowed to protest in the West. You're given space to protest in the West. Of course you're allowed to protest. We said, no, Sayyidina, we're not asking you about protesting. We know we are allowed to protest. Are we allowed to be able to break the law in order to get our message across? To put pressure on government, put pressure on companies, to change the discussion and the narrative. His Eminence, in his opinion, he said, we have the principle in our fiqh, which is called the principle of nizam. There has to be organization within a community, within a city, within a country. If you break the nizam of a society, it is not permissible for you to do civil disobedience. Tayyib, this is the opinions of His Eminence, Sayyid As-Sistani, Dama Tawfiquhu. We went, for example, to His Eminence, Ayatollah Sayyid Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Ayatollah Sabzawari, may Allah prolong his life for us, one of the great mujtahideen of Najaf, a powerhouse, and his father was one of the grand maraja of his time. Sayyid Sabzawari had a very insightful answer. Same question, same issue. In the West, this is happening. Muslims are doing this. Shia are doing this. Are we allowed to participate in it? Yes or no? Shunu ra'yuk? What is your opinion? His Eminence Sayyid Sabzawari responded by saying, if the mutakhassisin say it is needed, if the specialists in climate science say it is needed, it is permissible for you to go and break the law in order to be able to change the law for better. I asked you earlier on, what is your opinion 60 years later, about Martin Luther King. And not just Martin Luther King, You know, even since BLM, you know that there are many people around the country who continue to try to change civil rights. What is your opinion? Are we allowed to join them, support them, shar'an, yes or no? For example, whose civil rights are they protecting? Let's be honest, it's mine and your civil rights that they are protecting. Is it permitted? Ayatollah As-Sabzawari said, yes, you can go and break the law. Shar'an, it's permitted. On the premise that the mutakhassisin, the experts in the field say, we have reached the point where this is required of you to go and do it. What's really interesting is this. He didn't say, you have to come to me and ask. He said, if the experts are telling you this is needed, go and participate. We had the opportunity to visit His Eminence, Ayatollah Sayyid Murtada Shirazi. He is an outstanding mujtahid and is very, very well known within the circles in Najaf. He was answering the same question to us. The Shiraziya family have a different view. They made two conditions. Ayatollah Sabzawari's condition was what? You have to ask the climate specialists, the scientists, if this is needed. Sayyid Shirazi's opinion was this. Not only do you need the opinion of the mutakhassisin, you need the agreement, the shura of all the major fuqaha to agree with you, and then you can go and do your climate resistance. We said, Sayyidina, with respect, may Allah bless you, the fuqaha can't agree on anything. How are they going to agree that this issue needs? He said, that's our ruling. Our ruling is that there needs to be shura al-fuqaha, that the fuqaha need to be able to agree. A fourth opinion is very interesting because it actually involves you making the law. Who? You, the mu'mineen and mu'minat, making the law. Amongst the maraji', His Eminence Grand Ayatollah Sayyid Muhammad Taqi al-Mudarrasi, may Allah preserve him, he's the marja' of Karbala. And Sayyid al-Marja' al-Mudarrasi, his opinion is very interesting. His view is that when it comes to certain political and economic issues, we have to not only consult the fuqaha, but we have to consult the people for their view of where we are when it comes to a certain matter. Why? Because if they make a ruling and it's not possible for you to implement it, or you fundamentally just won't apply it, then what's the point of making a rule that you're only going to break? Yeah? So the wisdom is to actually seek the counsel of people. He says, Ayatollah al-Mudarrasi, he says this is actually known as ijma' and shura. As you know, in the Sunni fiqh, they have ijma'. Whatever is the consensus of the companions, this is fatwa. We don't believe in that. But he says that part of the idea of shura and part of the idea of ijma', getting consensus from people, is getting people's buy-in, because you're the ones who are going to be affected by the law directly. I read to you just one paragraph from a PhD work by Sheikh Hassan Baluchi, a PhD on the ijtihad of Ayatollah al-Mudarrasi. Did you know that there are PhDs that focus on the whole ijtihad of a marja'? Did you know that? They are out there. It's available. All of us can read and study and understand these things. He said the following. And remember, he says we have to ask our opinions to make fatwa in certain areas. I'm quoting to you from the PhD. Therefore, according to him, the best and most valid place of ijma', getting consensus, within the mechanism of deriving legal rules, should be restricted to those rules that vary from time to time and place to place. In this sense, ijma' is a tool for the jurists of the Islamic community through which they can reach a collective agreement on the issues of the variable issues relevant to societal matters. Examples of these societal matters are decisions like war and peace, approval of general policy regarding economic resolutions, and many other such things. The faqih may ask you and say, Do you think that this is something that you need and you could actually implement into your lives? If you say yes, the faqih may make a ruling because he knows that you're involved and invested in that cause. Remember, what did I say to you? One woman, may Allah bless her, she asked the question, can you say it help clean the toilets in Najaf? Whereas if we had serious conversations about the needs of the time, the mujtahid, the marja can actually make rulings in accordance with what we're talking to him about. The fuqaha are engaged in these things. But if they know that we are also engaged, it means the sharia and the ahkam can move forward and help us in accordance with our time. Please understand, it will not be long before you start seeing entire chapters of rulings coming out in these areas. So rather than being surprised by it and saying, oh my God, all of a sudden, why is Ayatollah X, why is my marja told me, for example, I have to reduce eating meat, or I have to do this, or I'm not allowed to buy from this particular kind of corporation. Understand that these are burgeoning discussions, and mine and your thinking and contribution can actually help shape that law and help to rescue the planet from that catastrophe. Inshallah, tomorrow we will continue on with another discussion about this series. I want you to imagine Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salam sitting amongst his companions, and then he starts describing the event of Karbala, describing the event of Kufa and Sham, describing the Arba'in, and then he says the following line: 6 things happened to us in Sham that had not happened anywhere else when we were paraded between the towns and cities. Imam alayhi salam was asked, what was the most difficult time for you? He replied, Ash-Sham, Ash-Sham, Ash-Sham. If you have been to Sham, I want you to take yourself to the bazaar itself. I want you to imagine that you are in that crowd as you see Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salam with shackles on his arms, with an iron rod around his neck. And I want you to imagine that the head of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein is next to Imam al-Sajjad, torturing him, mocking him, because every step he takes, he has to see the head of his father in front of him. I want you to take yourself to that moment. Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salam narrates to his companions and he says, 6 things happened to us in Sham that did not happen in any other time. They said to him, Ya ibn Rasulillah, what were those 6 things? He says the first of them was that when we arrived at Sham, they made us wait at the great gate outside whilst they prepared the entirety of the bazaar and the city with decorations. They wanted to celebrate that we were coming as captives. They wanted the whole city to come together. They wanted people from across the country to arrive before we were allowed into the city of Sham. They wanted as many people as possible to see our state that we found ourselves in. In every other town, they just marched us through, but this time they waited 3 days to gather everybody together. The second thing that happened to us when we entered into Sham was that they forcibly placed the heads of all of the shuhada between all of the captives. At other times, they took the heads to the front, but this time they placed the head of my father and my brother next to me, and they placed the heads of the children in front of the mothers, such that every time we took a step, we were forced to see the heads right there in front of us. But even worse than that, because the heads were in between us, whenever people were staring at the heads, they would see my aunties
Zainab bin Kulthum as well. Zainab alayhi salam says that they were staring at us and my face was uncovered because they had wrenched it off from us, the hijab. They had snatched it off from our face coverings. One of the companions comes to Sayyidah Zainab and says, "Oh Sayyidah Zainab, I was a companion of the Prophet. My name is Sahal ibn Sa'ad. Tell me, what can I do for you in this situation?" Imagine the heart of this companion is so broken, all he can do is say, "What is the least I can do to assist you?" Zainab alayhi salam says, "Take some money, give it to those who are actually holding the heads and tell them to put the heads at the front so that the men don't have to see the faces of our women and children." Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salam says the first thing that happened to us in Sham was that we were made to wait outside. The second was that the heads were placed in between all of us. The third thing that happened to us was that we were taken to the area of the Jews and the Christians, and then we were mocked. They came and said, "These are the grandchildren of those who defeated you at Khaybar and Khandaq. Come and get your revenge now from the family of Muhammad and Ali." This is the third thing that happened to us. Another thing that happened to us was that we were taken to a marketplace where they used to sell slaves. They tried to sell Banu Hashim as slaves. Can you imagine Ruqayya being sold as a slave? Can you imagine Zainab bin Kulthum being sold as a slave to the dirty hands of Banu Umayyah? Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salam says, only Allah saved us from this outcome. The fifth thing that happened to us in Sham was that when we were walking in Bazaar Sham, they used to throw things at us. They threw stones. One person threw boiling water at us, and another person took a piece of wood, set it alight, and threw it at me. It hit me on the head and started burning the head of Imam al-Sajjad. I ask you, brothers and sisters, Imam al-Sajjad's arms were bound. How did he put out that fire on his turban? I can only imagine that it was Sayyidah Zainab that came and saved the life of Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salam again. And the sixth thing that happened to us in Sham that had not happened to us anywhere else was that we were thrown inside a dungeon without a roof on it. When the heat of the day came, it burnt our skin, and in the night it was so cold. I ask you, how does a 4-year-old girl like Sayyidah Ruqayya stand the heat of Damascus and the cold of Damascus's hard floor in the prisons of Yazid whilst he is sleeping comfortably inside his palace?
ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. Please raise your hands and join us in dua. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to hasten the appearance of Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam. We ask you, Ya Allah, help us to understand our duties to our planet, to our human beings, and that we can actually be changing for the better, Ya Allah. We ask you, Ya Allah, there are many people in our community that are sick and very unwell, especially tonight. One of the founding members of our community, Ya Allah, bihaqqi Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salam, grant him shifa, insha'Allah. And we ask you, Ya Allah, for the opportunity to die in the love of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. Matim Hussein, Ya 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 Hussein.
कज़ा तू ही मिला दे मेरे बाबा से मुझे, कज़ा तू ही मिला दे سے مجھے اے قضا تو ہی ملا دے میرے بابا سے مجھے اے قضا تو ہی ملا دے میرے بابا میں وہ رخسار دکھاؤں گی میں وہ رخسار دکھاؤں گی جو نیلوں سے بھرے اے قضا تو ہی ملا دے میرے بابا سے مجھے اے قضا تو ہی ملا دے میرے بابا اے قضا تو ہی ملا دے بھیا اصغر کو بتاؤں گی جلے خیموں سے جلے خیموں سے میں بچاتی رہی جھولے کو میں بچاتی رہی جھولے کو تبھی بال جلے اے قضا تو ہی ملا دے میرے بابا سے مجھے اے قضا تو ہی ملا دے اے قضا تو ہی ملا دے میرے بابا سے مجھے Constantly scared, she cannot sleep. She's in fear of Shimar, how he follows her. Sometimes he hits her with his hand, sometimes he throws her on the sand, laughing at her pain. Ay qaza tu hi mila de میرے بابا سے مجھے اے قضا تو ہی ملا دے میرے بابا سے مجھے اے قضا تو ہی ملا دے میرے بابا سے مجھے میرے چاچا جو ملیں گے تو وہ در دیں گے مجھے وہ در دیں گے مجھے پر میں پہنوں گی کہاں اب تو پر میں پہنوں گی کہاں اب تو میرے کان کٹے اے قضا تو ملا دے میرے بابا اے قضا تو Baba, tell Ghazi to come back. I don't want water, I want my protector. Since he has gone, I haven't slept. Since uncle left, I haven't slept. Shimmer keeps me awake. Hai qaza tu hi mila میرے بابا سے مجھے اے قضا تو ہی ملا دے میرے بابا سے مجھے اے قضا تو ہی ملا دے میرے بابا سے مجھے Baba, those earrings you had given, oh, they took them away. How they tore them away. I would have given had they asked. I would have given with my hands, but my ears now bleed. Ay qaza tu hi mila de mere baba. Ay qaza tu hi mila de mere baba se mujhe. اے قضا تو ہی ملا دے میرے بابا سے مجھے بابا how will you recognize me how your princess has changed she no longer remains. My back is broken, my ribs too, even my face has turned blue. In the prison I'll stay. मैं जो दादी से मिलूंगी तो यही पूछूंगी पसलियां टूटी हो जिसकी वो भला कैसे जिए ऐ कज़ा तू ही मिला दे मेरे बाबा ऐ कज़ा तू ही मिला दे In the darkness they have left me, everyone went home. Sakina won't return. It's so dark here, where have you gone? Baba, take me to you. Ai kaza tu mila de.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليك يا رسول الله السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين السلام عليك يا خديجة الكبرى السلام عليك يا إمام حسن المجتبى السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله الحسين وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته السلام عليك يا إمام علي السجاد السلام عليك يا إمام محمد الباقر العلوم السلام عليك يا إمام جعفر الصادق السلام عليك يا إمام موسى الكاظم السلام عليك يا إمام علي بن موسى الرضا السلام عليك يا إمام محمد التقي الجواد السلام عليك يا إمام علي الهادي السلام عليك يا إمام حسن العسكري جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته السلام عليك يا حجة الله يا ابن الحسن يا صاحب العصر والزمان عجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله تعالى مخرجك وظهور الأمر السلام عليكم يا أهل بيت النبوة جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته
Just a quick announcement. Tomorrow after the program, there will be a Q&A session with Sheikh Jaffer, so please do try your best to attend that.